connections with universities from the United States of America and Canada, and CPEA matters. Over to you, Minister Andrew.
Thank you very much, Sarona, and good afternoon to all of our listeners and viewers, wherever you are, at home and abroad. It's certainly a pleasure to be able to bring to your attention pertinent information relating to two very significant activities happening in the education sector that will be of interest to everyone in the public. So the first of these bits of information, in fact, and even before I share on those bits of information, allow me to bring commendations to my staff at the Ministry of Education, from my permanent secretary, the Chief Education Officer, and all of the Deputy Chief Education Officers, and every staff. I've been receiving tremendous support and assistance from all of the staff at the Ministry of Education, and I think it's because of their overwhelming support we have achieved all the things that we have indeed achieved at the Ministry of Education. So I proceed, as was talked about before. This week we will entertain a team of educators led by Dr. Randy Glean from universities across the United States and Canada, and they would be in Grenada from the 9th and 10th, the 8th to the 10th. That's Thursday to Saturday this week. And they're on a mission to conduct open face-to-face sessions with interested Grenadians who are interested in pursuing studies in various areas at the undergraduate, graduate, and even the doctoral level in universities in the United States and Canada. Now, to facilitate those, there will be two open sessions, one held at the T.A. Marisho Community College on June 9th at 10 a.m., and a second one at the Grenada Trade Center, the same date, June 9th at 2:30 p.m. Now, so all persons who are interested or have the slightest interest in studies in the United States, we are asking you to come out to these open sessions, because these sessions will provide information concerning possible opportunities that exist, possible collaboration, the pathway to completing your course of study in universities in the United States and in Canada. Now, rest assured that there are several persons who have gone through similar type programs and who can tell you that they've gone through having to spend almost $0 in terms of payment to tuition. So the programs would point to you what will need to obtain to allow you to benefit from all of the scholarship opportunities, the work-study arrangements that exist, and the various programs that would be available. Now, the list of universities that will be represented at those meetings tomorrow, we have Western Illinois University, we have Southeast Missouri University, or State University, that is. We have the University of Guelph, and we have Sunny Brockport University, and Northwest Missouri State University, as well as our own local St. George's University. All of these universities will be represented in the open sessions, and so we invite all Grenadians to come and be a part of those. Now, I want to make a clarion call here for Grenadians living in the outer parishes. It's been our observation in education that most of the scholarship opportunities are taken up mostly by persons closer to the St. George's area. And the further out you go into the outer parishes, the less subscription you get to those scholarship opportunities. At the Ministry of Education, we are not happy about that, because we want to see, as we move towards achieving our goal of having at least one university graduate in every household, we want to make sure that indeed more of these opportunities are embraced by persons in the outer parishes. And so I'm encouraging persons from St. Patrick, St. Mark, St. John, St. Andrew, whatever your rural community might be, I'm encouraging you to come out in your numbers either at the TAMCC or at the Trade Center to ensure that you're a part of these conversations and the opportunities relating to those study opportunities in the United States. We take the opportunity too to thank Dr. Glean and his colleagues for their interest in Grenada and for their interest in collaborating with the Ministry of Education to see this become a reality. We look forward to meaningful engagements when they arrive later this week. The second matter that we are going to address in this sharing has to do with the Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment. And at this time of year, everybody gets pretty concerned, interested in the release of the scores, the release of the names. Everybody is interested in finding out who gets to go to what school and what grades they got. But this year, there'll be a number of interesting things happening. I want to point out that in treating with education scores and scores from assessments, the Ministry of Education is guided by pieces of legislation in the Education Act. And in fact, Section 161 of the Education Act, 161 subsection 5 of the Education Act says it guards against the publishing of assessment results in a manner that highlights individual students and teachers. In fact, it specifically reads, the minister may publish the results of assessments together with a commentary on them by the Chief Education Officer, but not so as to identify individual students or teachers. There is a section of the Act, Section 23, subsection 7, which deals with student records and reports. It says a student's records is privileged information for the use of the institution and of the Ministry of Education officials in the performance of their functions, and is not available to any other person or institution without the written permission of the parent, or if the student is 18 years or older, the student. In other words, the Ministry of Education has been operating in contravention to these in past years, publishing both names and scores of students without expressed written permission. Consequently, this year, there will be no publication of scores, there will be no publication of ranks. So, and that's very much in keeping with the Education Act. Not only that, I think the very publication of the scores has helped in many ways to undo what we are attempting to do in education. It has promoted a system of rating and ranking among schools, and a system where teachers were encouraged inadvertently to teach to the test. Because while we encourage them verbally as education officials to teach the students, the ministry has been in the practice of validating the top performers, validating the best performing schools by ranking the scores. And so there's a craze to go someplace, there's a craze, and many persons have complained of the psychological damage that this whole craze has created for some of their children who do not perform as well, students who get compared to other persons. Well, you used to be brighter than this person. How come you get less now? And so all of these things have created psycho-emotional trauma for many of our nation's children. And so not only will you have no rankings and no scores, but this year, 2023, every child will be placed in a secondary school. I repeat, this year, 2023, every child will be placed in a secondary school. And so the entire listing of students who attempted the CPE exam will be published in alphabetical order, and every child will be placed Now, there are a number of things I want to bring to our attention. So the names, the assigned secondary school, and the existing primary school will be published without scores and without rank. Schools, though, will be issued the listing of the students that they sent with their corresponding scores for evaluations. So the schools that sent their students will receive the list of their students, their scores and their ranking, because we anticipate that the schools will need to do their own evaluation and review to monitor and to evaluate their effectiveness and for their own improvement. Students who merit their placement, because let me make it clear here, there is a CPEA exam policy that affords the persons who placed within the first 200 to get the school that they chose, and that's part of the existing Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment policy. Those students who merit their placement in a secondary school will have their names sent directly to the schools by the Ministry of Education. So we are not denying the students their right as per the policy, but we are going to have that sent to the schools directly so that the schools will be aware, having been officially informed by the Ministry of Education, these are the 10, these are the 15 students, these are the 20 students who chose your school and placed rightly within the top 200. So that will be happening. Rest assured too that all students will receive a personalized CXC report detailing performance, rank, score, areas of strength, areas of weakness, and that traditionally has been sent to the schools. Each student will receive one of those in keeping with what has happened for years. And if students and their parents wish to compare those elsewhere, they can. But as a ministry, we choose not to. So that's going to be available to students and parents. And let me assure all concerned that we are aware as we move towards universal secondary education again, we want to embrace SDG 4, access to education for all. And we know that these barriers, I've listened to passionate stories of persons who probably didn't make it the first time and felt stigmatized, but they finally came around, and they're great successes today. And so we're aware that this policy position to have all persons placed in secondary schools will come with some degree of need for support. And so my team at the Ministry of Education, they're already engaging in thought as to how we will provide that support. The support will start, and that's for those persons who probably would perform at the lowest levels. The support will start within the summer. So within the summer period, there is going to be remedial work targeting those persons in the particular areas of deficiency to ensure they are better prepared to attend secondary school. And we intend also to have a continuous program of support. The full details of that is not fully fleshed out yet, but we have started brainstorming for the modalities we are going to use to have a continuous program of support for those persons going into secondary school. Even as I say that, I am not ignoring the fact that we are putting good attention on early childhood education and the literacies and the numeracies at that level, because we are confident that if we continue to address the literacy and numeracy challenges there, and if we build the skill sets at that level, then we will systematically eliminate all of the challenges that you currently realize and experience higher up in the education sector. So we continue to do that, and we'll continue to provide the support for these students as we move with this policy. This whole initiative to have all students placed comes in the context of government's wider policy position and thinking to include skills in a more robust way in the school system and to mandate education legislatively till 18. This gives an opportunity to ensure that we fine-tune at what points in the school system persons are able to choose the track that will best suit them, and to facilitate wider introduction, as has started already with the expansion of TVET in primary schools. But that is expected to continue, and that will dovetail into our policy position to have education mandated till 18, giving more and more students the opportunity to stay in school and get skilled, rather than leaving at 16 and for 2 years wondering what's happening with me without acquiring the necessary skills. So, having said those, we are quite committed to continuing to work together, but I want to reiterate, every child that wrote the CPE exam this year, 2023, will be placed in a secondary school come September 2023, and we'll continue to give as much support as we can and as we need to all such students in the system. I thank you, and we'll be open for any question or comment that persons may have.
Thank you, Minister Andrew. That's a lot for us to digest, moving away from the usual, that is, all students will be placed, no rankings published, moving on to age 18 for education, so that skills can be, acquired. Excellent. So let's see if we have any questions from my colleagues for the head table. Okay, we have GBN here with a question. GBN?
Right. Good afternoon to everybody. My first question is relating to the classrooms in the secondary schools. Now that the Ministry of Education has decided to let all students head to secondary schools, how would the classroom be for teachers? Would it create a cluster? How many students would be in the classes?
Good afternoon, and thank you for that question. No, it doesn't change the teacher-pupil ratio. If we were to detail, there are quite a number of schools that are not properly served relative to students who transit from the CPA. So we are confident that we have sufficient space to accommodate the students within our secondary schools in terms of the established teacher-pupil ratio.
GBN, are you satisfied with this answer? Any other question?
Yes, I have another question relating to the students
transit from so we are confident that we have sufficient space to accommodate.
GBN, are you there? Ms. Spear? Ms. Spear Thomas? Okay.
Yes, I'm here. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I am hearing you now. Could you go ahead with your question?
Yes, I was asking the students who are slow and who may have a problem in some of the subjects. You said that you would have classes for them for the summer. Now, there are some students who are not, how should I put this, just not ready for secondary school level. And they would need to stay back in the school for some sort of reason. Let's be honest here. There are children in grade 6 who can't even read a complete book. How is that going to be dealt with when you send them to secondary school, where they would have to continue to keep up on a primary level and still try to focus on a secondary level?
Thank you very much for that concern. Now, let us establish that schooling is created basically to teach a child, to get a child ready from one point to the next. We also, and it is proven in terms of theories and so on, relative to people learn at different rate. So therefore, what we need to do is to begin to teach the child. And we are aware, as from a ministry point of view, that we would need to offer support to teachers and schools as to how best we can cater for the needs of these children. So we are fully aware of that. So, and Rena, sometimes we hear the statement all the time relative to, people are not academically inclined. It's just a state of readiness. We have to meet that child wherever that child is and teach the child the requisite skills so that that child can learn, even self-learn as well. So it's us finding the pathways, giving the support to teachers to ensure that the students can strive in the best environment, identifying the students' different learning skills and learning types, and we give the support necessary to move them along that particular pathway.
Thank you, Permanent Secretary. Mr. Elvis Maureen, another question? Okay, we move to Ms. Straker. Linda Straker, your question, please.
Hello and good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. Now, this issue, parents are learning this today as within a sort of days lead up to the result of CPA coming out. There are probably parents who would have made vacation plans for children to travel, and these may be children who, for one reason or the other, have to do the work because they would have not gotten on merit. They would have been placed. How would these parents have to, what adjustment will be made by the ministry to deal with students who fall in that category? My other question is, we have known this happening for years. Since IPAS Common Entrance, before IPAS Common Entrance, which was more than 3 decades ago. What is the background for this, what I will describe as sudden change? Was there a legal challenge to the publishing of these results? Or was it a case where an assessment was done? And if it was an assessment that was done, can you say why this assessment was done and who conducted that assessment?
So I think I'll take that one. Thank you very much, Linda, for your question. To the issue of whether or not there was a legal challenge, no, there wasn't a legal challenge. In fact, as an educator all along, I have always felt that in that regard, the ministry contributed to a problem, the problem of almost forcing teachers to teach to the test, because of the way we validated and treated with our scores. In many occasions, we did not attempt to treat with the performance of the student by way of assessing and analyzing their strengths, their deficiencies, their weaknesses. Most people got concerned with position, rank, and where they were. And that in itself kind of caused several problems within the education sector. It caused hiding of students. There are some schools where students get hidden because they will not get a good or a high score, and schools don't want a negative score to be attached to them. So some students get hidden somewhere in the system. They don't allow them to write certain exams. And all of these, and I can point out other issues too, apart from the complaints from people of the psycho-emotional impact, the negative psycho-emotional impact that was having on persons. And so being that we're in the position to shift and direct policy, we felt initially that we were going to publish results without scores and all that, but after due consideration and sharing at the highest level, it was felt if we're going, let's go, and let's go all the way, which is the intent and the direction. So it wasn't out of any litigation or any court issue, but after careful reflection, that one, we needed to be acting more in consistency with the Education Act in terms of how we treat with scores, and two, we needed to be acting in a way that supports best practice in education. In fact, some forward-thinking schools have gone ahead and have stopped issuing positions, and they were only issuing averages and grades. So over time, some schools can tell you, they've gotten their parents to become a bit more accustomed with, my child has an average of 90. My child has an average of 70, as opposed to my child comes first, because you can have a case where the child came first with an average of 60 because they're in a streamed class where, so we're trying to create the shift in mentality, and we just feel as a ministry we need to do our part to set the stage right in that direction. The other question had to do with what happens for children who might find themselves with parents who made additional plans. If those were to arise, the fact is not only do we have the summer sessions, but we will have a structure for ongoing support. And so I don't think they would be totally left out. Obviously, they'd miss some of the preparedness and readiness sessions that it would be in their best interest to get. But if where they're going is more important, we would accede and try to facilitate them when they return in some of the ongoing programs.
Thank you, Minister Andrew. Any other questions? Okay, we have another question from GBN. GBN, you're on.
Yes. How are teachers accepting this initiative?
We had, at the ministry, thank you, Rena, we had consultations with principals of primary schools and the principals of secondary schools, and we got overwhelmingly positive response from those principals because they live in the systems, they understand the challenges, they hear it all the time, and in fact many of their schools feel the pressures of the spill-off from how we treat with the results. And so we got good support from all of the principals, both primary and secondary schools, that we engaged on this matter, so I'm happy to report that. We did not get a chance to engage parents, but you'd recognize that there's a short window, and I'm not sure we can always get the time to consult to the extent, because the truth is we are charged with the responsibility to create a policy position, and we are confident we are acting legally, we are acting supported by the law, we are acting in the interest of the children, in the interest of the schools, in the interest of the parents. So I don't even think we'd have a real question or worry about the soundness of the decision, but we did consult some of the key education stakeholders, the principals.
Thank you, Minister Andrew. Ms. Spear?
Yes, I would, just to follow up with the question that I asked, Minister, would the summer classes include teachers, or would you have outside sources?
The exact mode is not fully defined. We know we cannot rob teachers of their time beyond the 2 weeks that's still ours, which is normally assigned for training and seminars, and that too is being planned. Whether we collaborate with teachers to get that support from them, or we get outside sources, or we get volunteers, all of these options we are prepared to explore to make sure that we deliver on the commitment to provide the support that's required, preparing students to go forward.
Thank you, Minister Andrew. Any other body? Any of my colleagues online?
I did have a final question. Minister, you spoke a lot about all the negatives of the competitive atmosphere when it comes to the results. But what about the positive effects of competitive between students, competitiveness between students?
Well, I'm not sure we are removing the competitiveness. Schools will still be encouraged to, like they have done for years, celebrate their good performers, their top performers. I know all schools have done that, their top 3, their top 4, whatever it is, and the schools will have access to that bit of information as well. So nobody is discouraging that. But just that as a ministry, we are guided by laws, we are guided by an Education Act, and we want to operate inside the ambits of that. But we certainly encourage persons to compete, and to compete not so much against the other person or the other school, but to compete against your last best performance. You must always be competing against yourself. And if the last time you scored 90, why can't you aim to score 95? I mean, outdo your last best, and probably that's the kind of competition I want to encourage more than anything else, rather than competing with the neighbor's child down the road or the other school, and that's where things get a little dicey and muddy. But we don't have a problem with competing against yourself and excelling and rewarding that too. And one of the things too, you see, one of the things we need to recognize, we have one person coming first in the island, but the bulk of our students would be in what we call that bell curve, where the significant percentage of the students who attempt an exam would be found in that average range between whatever scores, and probably Mrs. Gooding would be able to tell us that more precisely as the Deputy Chief for exams. But the bulk of students will fall there in any normal curve. And we have to be careful that we try to energize the more than the fewer. And so our policy positions should be geared towards that. And I think what we are doing is in keeping with that.
Thank you, Minister Andrew. Thank you, Mr. Spear-Thomas. Anyone else with questions? Okay, we go back to Ms. Straker. Linda Straker, you're on.
Thank you. My question has to do with this to the minister. This is not the first time Grenada has implemented such an initiative. My memory serves me right as a reporter. I think somewhere between 2008 and 2013, this was an initiative adopted by the Ministry of Education back then. Can you tell us whether or not any research was done to have an assessment as to how that impacted students in the immediate and in the future? And what has the assessment taught the Ministry of Education for this initiative to now be re-implemented by another NDC administration? And my final question to the minister, can your ministry confirm that there has been security changes to the schools in Grenada? Have new contracts been awarded to new persons to the protection of our schools and the assets of schools in Grenada?
Thank you for your questions. So let me start with the latter question. What I can say to you is new arrangements were made in keeping with a move to have all security contracts brought under the armpits of the Ministry of National Security. So your questions might be better directed there. And in having done that, I know some contracts were reassigned and people had to reapply and all of that. So it's possible. I know some schools have had change in contracts, but it's not new because those schools already had existing contracts. So it's just, in some cases, a turnaround. Some people were re-engaged. So that happened. The difference is that it's now under the Ministry of National Security, all security contracts for schools. So I don't know that it's anything different to what used to be outside of the fact that it's now administered and directed from the Ministry of National Security. Mrs. Gooding, would you want to talk about the observation and trends for the last couple of years in terms of the exams, or you want me to? You can go ahead.
Good evening, everyone, listening public. We started the CPEA examinations after 2008. It started in 2012. And yes, we tried the complete 100% candidates being sent into secondary school already, all right? Then reverted somewhat to a lesser number each year that followed, okay? If we look at the data from then to now, we would notice that we would have an amount of students within the range of 100 and 200 students remained in, having to go back to the primary schools. Now, as Minister said, it is not impossible, all right, to have 100% of our students placed in the secondary schools. What is important here is support, scaffolding through educational intervention in a strategic way to work with these students. When one considers the social impact of the decision to keep students who have reached a certain age, a certain level, back in the primary school, it is one issue that is big enough to encourage having these students be placed in the secondary school with strategic, planned, working intervention. Okay? Intervention that is not just ad hoc, but is continuous and is there consistently over a period of time to take these students from one place, from wherever they started at the secondary school, to a higher place. Thank you. I hope this gives some clarity and answers your question.
Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell-Gooding. Do we have another question? Oh, I'm sorry, my mic was off. Yes, do we have any questions? Okay, so seeing that we do not have any questions, any closing remarks?
So before we get into closing remarks, I want to emphasize something to the listening public, that the exit side of it is actually persons who attempt the CPA. It's not a situation where because you attain grade 6 level that you would transit to secondary school. I cannot do enough but to emphasize the fact that we need the support of all in making this a success. At the end of the day, we have our parents, we have our schools, including our principals, our teachers, critical to the process, and the Ministry of Education, to support. I want to encourage our practitioners to be very open about this. This is not new. It is something that has been done before, and therefore it shouldn't garner the level of anxiety as if it's something that is new, that is thrust upon us. So I think we have to find our ways to work. Now it means therefore that we have to focus on something that many of our trained teachers, and even through the ministry's interventions, focus on differentiated instructions. If we focus on that well, we would give the necessary support to the students. We have to also understand that that score doesn't really define the child's potential. Because for some reason that child may have, a bad period. but that doesn't really define the child's true potential. So I think we have to give the support. We have to understand that children, they learn in different ways. We can employ technology that garner very high interest where students are concerned. And as such, I believe if we do that well and we have an open mindset to this, the ministry is very committed to doing whatever it takes to ensure that teachers are upskilled as best as possible so that we can begin to give the support necessary for our students, that is the nation's children, so that they can realize their true potential, they can transit successfully, obtain the necessary skill set that they can make meaningful contribution to the society. And I think it's important that we understand this. We wouldn't put blame on anybody, but of course, it must be a concern for us that if a child transits all the way up to grade 6 and some core competencies are missing. So it means, therefore, we're not just looking at a one shot to address the issue at the secondary level, but we also have to give the necessary support to our practitioners at the primary level so that we could avert that situation happening in the future. What our attempt now is to fix it there, but we wouldn't stop there. We have to create a pathway so that we can begin to strengthen our processes lower down. And by so doing, over the years, we're going to see children matriculating that with the requisite competencies.
Thank you, PS. I recall Minister pointing out that early childhood education will be a great focus because you have to start there. So thank you very much. Minister, anything else you want to add? Mrs. Gooding?
Thank you, Minister. What I would like to say as we close is it's been a pleasure sitting here and sharing with the public. I also would like to say that change is never easy for human beings to accept. However, life will not happen without change. Change has come. We need to embrace the change. We need to look at the positive side of it because I believe there is a lot of positives in it. When you weigh it against the negatives, as I said before, in terms of the social issues that come out of students repeating and so on, if we can catch them at that point and work with them, I believe, and the Ministry of Education believes, that more good can come out of this. And so this evening, I hope the listening public will embrace this change, work with us, parents, teachers, principals, everyone, and let us make the positives that can come out of it work for Grenada's children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gooding.
Right, so let me thank everybody who has followed this listening and viewing audience, and thank you as well, and to thank my team at the head table. Let me say we are aware that this requires support, and we as a ministry, we commit to providing that support to ensure that indeed no child is left behind. We are confident that our strategies and our focus at the early childhood level and the lower levels will bear fruit. Of course, it wouldn't bear fruit for this CPA class, but in a few years, we anticipate that the fruit will be evident. While we continue to put that effort there, we have to do the damage control for those that have probably have already left this table, and this is part of the attempt. We are going to provide the support both to our teachers by way of training. We will be coming to persons, probably retired teachers even, who still have energy and who still want to serve. We probably will engage some of you for various bits of engaging in some of these regards, so stay open to that. But at the end of the day, I think our entire society is going to benefit when we collaborate in this regard. So I want to wish every student who attempted the CPA exam this year and who will evidently be placed in a secondary school all the best to you and your parents as you engage on another level of your educational journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Andrew. And as you didn't hear, the results are not here yet. You know, our phones have been ringing off with calls to find out if the results are here. They're not here as yet. So I want to thank Minister Andrew, Mrs. Mitchell Gooding, Mr. Elvis Moraine, who is the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture, the entire team from GIS. I am Sarana Mitchell. Thank you for joining us. Have a great afternoon.